welcome to Unit 3. In this unit, we are looking at emerging thought and language and how that whole process happens in toddlerhood, infancy and toddlerhood. You know, you are able to develop the sentences that you do today and to speak today the way in which you do because of the groundwork that was laid when you were an infant. We're also going to be looking at not just language, but like I said, thought. And so we're going to look pretty heavily at Piaget in this unit so that you can see his ideas and his theories about how children develop their thought patterns and their ability to think. So there are a couple of videos in this unit in the PowerPoint embedded in there that you will be able to watch that will demonstrate quite clearly his understanding of how children develop their thought patterns, which is really quite fascinating. Scripture does tell us, when I was a child, I thought as a child. We know that thinking is different from childhood into adolescence and adulthood. Another thing that's quite interesting to me that you'll look at in this unit is the zone of proximal development. And there is a zone in which we can teach. And so the zone, very practically stated, is what a child can do alone and what a child can do with adult assistance at the top. And so it would be real important for you to understand what a child is able to do by himself, by herself, and what they can do at the top end of that. And that's very easily understood if you consider the kinds of things that we teach children. You might be able to teach children when they are quite young that these are the names of the books of the Bible, but you cannot ask a 5-year-old to open their Bible and to look up John 3:16 because they're not going to be able to do that by themselves. They might be able to do that with adult help, but they cannot do that alone. That's not where they're at yet. So the zone is real important for us to understand whether we're teaching them secular things or spiritual things as well. We want to keep that zone in mind. So pay particular notice to that as you are looking through this unit. Another thing that I want you to really pay close attention to is multiple intelligence. And you will find the discussion of multiple intelligence in the textbook Reciprocating Self in Chapter 7. Howard Gardner has proposed that intelligence comes in lots of different forms. And I think each of us would be able to say that when we were younger, when we were in elementary school, there were certain subjects that came to you easier than other subjects did. You had a particular intelligence in that way. I know it certainly was that way for me. I did very well in any subject that had to do with language or things that had to do with the study of people, history, all of that. But when it came to math, I was horrible. I was just horrible. And I beat myself up about this for many years because all through school, I was always placed in honors classes or advanced classes, except for math. Well, they tried putting me in those advanced classes with everybody else because I was in their class and everything else, but I did very poorly in math and I struggled with it. Cried about it. It was a horrible experience for me. And then when I got ready to go to college, I really wondered, is college for me? Because I knew I was going to have to take college algebra. And I was terrified of that. I didn't know anything about multiple intelligence at that time. Then years later, as I was studying education and I learned about multiple intelligence, it came to me, aha, I really do not have much intelligence in that area. I'm very good at other things, but I'm not so good at that. That's not the way that my brain is wired. That is not the way that God made me. And so I sort of give myself a little reprieve there. Now, I can do basic math. And I think any of us can learn in any of the avenues of learning, these ways of learning, but some of us are bent in different kinds of ways. My sister is very visual. She's very spatial. And yet she's not logical at all. I have a very high musical intelligence and a very high verbal intelligence, but I'm not good in logical, mathematical kinds of things. I want to illustrate this for you very quickly with an illustration of a time that I took a group of kids to church camp. It was Cross Point. This was years ago. It was a precursor to Century Kid. I had a group of kids there. They all had to learn a sport. and they had to participate in 2 or 3 different sports. The last night there, I come into my room to find 2 girls, one of whom is crying like nobody's business, just crying her eyeballs out. She'd called her mother to come and get her. And I said, what is this about? And crying through her tears. Now, this was a very verbal child who had an extensive vocabulary, even when she was very little. She says to me, Miss Donna, when you play volleyball, your team is there to cover your butt. But when you do gymnastics, your butt is out there all alone, and I cannot even do a cartwheel. I can't do any of those things. She was terrified that she was going to have to go and be on display and not be able to do what she was asked to do. And the other little girl as well was very musical, but both of them had chosen, they were in gymnastics and they couldn't do it. They were just bad at it. But knowing all of this and knowing that I wanted them to have a good time and to protect them, this was not their skill set. I went to their teacher and I said, you know, they're going to come tomorrow and they will cheer everybody else on, but I'm not going to put them on display because, you see, I'm not really good at that kind of stuff myself. I understood. And so their teacher, who was a wonderful, godly young woman, said to me, they could do it if they just tried. I said, no, they can't do it. They're not going to do it. Not by tomorrow anyway. And so with their well-being in mind, I had them go and sit on the side. If I had just said, sure, you can do it, you're just not trying hard enough, that would have been destructive to their spirit. So understanding where a child's strength is, how they're wired, that's helpful to us as we teach them. When I was in junior high, I learned these words, which I'm sure some of you learned. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Now, I could go on. In my mind, I'm actually singing it. I learned that in a song. And to this day, I won't tell you how many years later, I can still say every word because I learned it to a melody. I'm very musical, and it stuck with me all these years because I learned it that way. Keep that in mind as you are developing learning opportunities, not just for children, but for adults as well. I hope you enjoy this unit of study. I'll talk to you again soon.